Long ago, in a faraway land, there lived a princess who was known for her arrogant and rude behavior. Princess Adora was the only child of the most powerful and wealthiest king in the whole of Uzo land. She was indeed very beautiful, and very many men wished to have her as their wives, but marriage was far away from her thoughts. She was rude and thought herself a goddess and that no man deserved her. Being the only child, she was so loved by her parents that they gave her everything she wanted, and they spoiled her with many treasures and servants, and this only increased her arrogance and rudeness, to the point that all her servants despised her and sometimes wished something would happen to her and she would go away. Anytime she wanted to move around town, she would make use of her chariot and moved around with a large convoy of maidens and guards surrounding her. After all, she was a lady of wealth. One day, when it was her birthday, she had made her father ask all the villagers to present a gift to her. She instructed that it must be something precious and of value. So that evening, the palace hall was filled with people carrying gifts. "What is this?" she fumed. "You bring me fruits? I am the princess. Are you trying to say I lack food?" She spat at the poor farmer who brought her a basket of fruit. Before the farmer could say something, Princess Adora asked the guards to lock the farmer up. The next person, who was a seamstress, came forward with some fabrics as her gift. Adora threw the fabrics away, saying it was too cheap, and also asked the guards to lock her up. Just as the third person came forward, there was a knock on the door. The palace door flew open to reveal an old, dirty, and weak woman. "Help me. I have traveled far and I am weak and hungry. Please provide me with some food and shelter. I'll give you this beautiful rose in exchange." Adora scoffed and covered her nose. "What do I need your rose for when I can get a whole garden of it? Get your smelly self out of this palace." Adora spat and shut the door against the woman. Suddenly, a bright light illuminated the hall and the woman appeared like a ghost. Stretching her hand towards Adora, she spoke. "Cursed be you and everyone who lives here. You have been blinded by your cold heart. Until you find someone to love you as you are, you will forever remain a beast." The woman disappeared after this. When Adora noticed nothing happened, she laughed and mocked the woman. The following morning, Adora was surprised that no one came to knock on her door to wake her up as usual. She got angry and left her room to query and also fire the maids, but to her surprise, she didn't find anyone to talk to. The palace was very quiet and it was unusual. She then went to the kitchen, and to her shock, she found that the cooks had all turned to stone. She screamed in horror and ran to her parents, but she met the same thing. They had turned to stone. As she hurried to the maid's quarter, she caught the reflection of herself in the mirror. She was now an ugly beast. She screamed and passed out. When she woke up, she thought it was a dream and sighed in relief. But to her shock, when she looked at herself, she saw that her skin had been covered by fur. Without thinking, she ran out of the palace in search of the old woman who had placed the curse on her. But once she stepped out, everyone began to run away, screaming in fear of the beast, but Adora overlooked them. All that she wanted was to find the old woman, but her search was quickly interrupted as the men of the village gathered to kill the beast. Adora had no choice but to stop her search and run into the forest to hide herself for her safety. The men, after searching and couldn't find the beast, decided to set the forest ablaze. The beast would choke and die of the smoke. They set it ablaze, and due to the smoke, Adora passed out. but before she was completely unconscious, she felt a strong arm lifting her up. As the rays of the setting sun filtered through the small cracks in the wooden walls of the dimly lit hut, Adora slowly regained consciousness. Her head throbbed with pain, and for a moment she couldn't remember where she was. But as her senses came back to her, she realized that she wasn't in the burning forest anymore. With a groan, Adora attempted to sit up, only to freeze in shock as she realized that her skin was back to its normal state. A wave of relief washed over her as she ran her hands through her smooth, unblemished face. It finally dawned on her that she transformed into a beast in the morning, only to return to her human form at nightfall. Mustering the strength to stand, Adora made her way towards the entrance of the hut. However, before she could step out, a voice stopped her in her tracks. "You can't go out there," the voice said firmly, causing Adora to turn in surprise. Sitting at a corner was a very handsome man with kind eyes and a warm smile. His name was Kofi, a hunter who had found her in the forest and brought her to his humble abode. "It's already nightfall, and it is too dangerous for you to be wandering around." Adora's stomach growled loudly, and her hunger reminded her of her urgent need for food. Swallowing her pride, she glared at the man and barked, "Give me food, now!" Kofi raised an eyebrow, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Ah, but my dear, I can only give you food if you say please," he taunted. Adora hesitated for a moment, her pride warring with hunger. She had never begged anyone before, but the grumbling in her stomach got the better of her. "Please," she muttered reluctantly. Kofi smiled, a warm and genuine smile that made her heart flutter, and turned to prepare a simple meal for them. As they ate together in silence, Adora felt a strange connection forming with the stranger. Exhausted from her ordeal, Adora soon fell into a deep sleep, Kofi keeping a watchful eye over her. The next morning, Adora awoke to find herself transformed back into the beast. Panic surged through her veins, and she attempted to flee from the hut to spare Kofi from her terrifying presence. However, he stopped her in her tracks, his gaze steady and unwavering. "I am not afraid of you, my dear," he declared adamantly. "You can stay with me for as long as you want, but you must contribute and help with the household chores." At first, Adora found it challenging, as she had been spoiled and never had to do anything for herself. However, with Kofi's patience and guidance, she slowly adjusted to the new way of life. She learned to hunt and gather firewood, and even began to take pleasure in the simple tasks she had once scorned. One day, as they ventured into the forest to hunt and gather firewood, Adora noticed an old woman struggling under the weight of a bundle of firewood. Insecurity washed over her, fear of scaring off the old woman with her monstrous appearance. But to her surprise, the old woman showed no signs of fear. Summoning her courage, Adora approached the woman and offered her assistance. Grateful, the old woman thanked her and in a moment of unexpected kindness revealed the secret to breaking the curse. The old woman explained, "The curse can only be broken if someone truly loves you for who you are, beast and all. Look for someone who sees beyond your appearance and loves the person within." Hearing this, Adora felt resigned to her fate, believing that no one could ever love her in her cursed state. But as time went on, she and Kofi slowly began to develop feelings for each other, their love growing stronger with each passing day. Yet they kept their emotions hidden, afraid to reveal their love for fear of rejection. Adora thought Kofi could never love her in her beastly form, and Kofi worried that Adora would never believe in his love. One evening, as they embarked on a night stroll through the woods, Kofi confessed his painful past, a story of loneliness and heartache. His parents had died when he was young, and he had had to go to live with his auntie, who did not miss any opportunity to maltreat him. He had to run away to save himself, and the forest was the only place he could go to. In that moment, Adora felt the weight of her own burdens, her regrets and remorse pouring out as she recounted her own tale. She whispered, "I had been a bad person, and it led me to this cursed existence. I resigned myself to the idea that no one could ever love me like this." As the words hung in the air, Kofi drew closer to Adora, his eyes filled with a tenderness she had never seen before. "But I'm already in love with you," he confessed, his voice filled with sincerity. Their lips met in a passionate embrace, and in that moment, a binding light enveloped them. The old woman who had cast the curse appeared before them, her face filled with satisfaction. "As you have learned humility and found love," she spoke with a gentle smile, "the curse is broken." Adora's heart filled with joy as she apologized to the old woman for her previous behavior. With gratitude and renewed purpose, she vowed to make amends for her past mistakes. The following morning, Adora woke to find herself free from the curse. Overjoyed, she pleaded with Kofi to accompany her back to the village. With his hand in hers, they returned together. When they arrived, the people who had been turned to stone in the palace were restored. Adora made peace with everyone she had wronged. However, when she introduced Kofi as the man she wanted to marry, her parents were hesitant, insisting that only a man of honor and prestige was worthy of their daughter. Adora shared the story of how Kofi had taken her in and cared for her, and how they had come to love each other despite her appearance. Seeing the depth of their love and the profound change in their daughter, they decided that there was no better man for her, and her parents agreed. Adora and Kofi were wed in a beautiful ceremony, and Kofi was crowned heir to the throne.